What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. Took the last 3 or 4 days off due to the fact that right now, as a Giants content creator and as a Giants fan, we're kind of in limbo. We don't know what's going to happen right now with the general manager, and once that happens, a lot of the dominoes will start to fall. We'll hear about the head coaching candidates in terms of the finalists that they're looking to bring in. Once we get the head coach, we'll find out who the offensive and defensive coordinators are going to be, and we'll get to take shape of what the team is going to look like going into 2022 based upon some of the prior history of the head coach and the GM, so on and so forth. But yeah, there hasn't been a whole lot to talk about. A lot of people have asked me to go live. I'm going to go live the second, well, maybe not the second, but very shortly thereafter, we find out who the GM is going to be for the Giants, and then hopefully we get, the list of the head coaching candidates that the New York Giants are looking to bring in. Right now, you're hearing a lot of rumors. You hear Flores, you hear Harbaugh, you hear Dable, you hear so many names. I'll wait till I get the official list to start to do individual videos on each one of these candidates. But one name we know for sure that the New York Giants are going to be bringing in came out about an hour ago on Twitter. I think it was from Tom Pelissero. I'll pull up the exact tweet. Dan Quinn will be brought in for an interview with the New York Giants. I'll give my opinion on all of that throughout this video. But before people panic and go crazy, keep in mind last time around, I think the Giants brought in 7 candidates. They brought in 9 candidates for the GM search. The Giants are doing a very thorough search. And as long as the New York Giants talk to the GM candidates that they're interested in hiring, and they were all potentially interested in Dan Quinn, I see no problem whatsoever bringing Quinn in for an interview. But let's jump into the final candidates, at least as of now, for the New York Giants with the GM position. So far, 2 of them have already had their second interview. That being Poles, and that, of course, being Joe Schoen. Peters will interview tomorrow. And to my knowledge, at least right now, those are the only 3 that made it to the second stage of interviews with the New York Giants. But let's jump into all the details. First is coming out from Jordan Renan. Adam Peters was the 3rd name I'd heard mentioned as a possibility. So it's Joe Schoen, Ryan Poles, and Adam Peters as final. So let's talk about them. I'm not going to do a whole background. I did a video on that if you want to look at it. I did it about 2 weeks ago when I heard about the candidates, but I'll give my initial impression on all 3. If you would have asked me during the GM search, after I did my research, which 3 candidates were my favorites, it would have been these 3. It would have been Joe Schoen, it would have been Ryan Poles, and it would have been Adam Peters. Peters is probably slightly in the lead for me, but in my opinion, the guy who I think is going to get the job will be Joe Schoen. Joe Schoen has done great things. He was with the Buffalo Bills for about 5 years, has a history with the Miami Dolphins, in which Bill Parcells hired him, did very good things with the Carolina Panthers, had a lot to do with the construction of that football team that inevitably went 15-1. He was there before Dave Gettleman was ever the GM and built that roster up before Gettleman even got there, before that team went to the playoffs and made a Super Bowl and nearly became world champions. And Joe Schoen's been a really hot name. The second that Bean, who actually had a pretty good relationship with Dave Gettleman, the general manager for the Buffalo Bills, the second that Bean got the job, he went back and he made sure that Joe Schoen was going to be his assistant GM. He's been there ever since with Bean, 2017 on, and the Buffalo Bills have done incredible things. They missed the playoffs 17 straight years before Bean and Schoen got there. They've now made the playoffs 4 to the last 5, and they're playing in the divisional round this week against the Kansas City Chiefs. So Joe Schoen, a very credible candidate. I think right now is probably the favorite based off the fact that I think it's come out that the New York Giants have been talking to him for quite some time. Maybe they've been talking to these other guys as well, but the fact that he has a history with Gettleman in terms of working with him in the past, if you go back and read some of the things that Bean has said about Gettleman, he actually likes Gettleman. You would have to think that they were talking throughout the year, and this may have been the candidate that the Giants were zeroing in on, which would explain why it was the first guy they brought in. That by no means means that he definitely is going to have the job. It's why I have not come out and made a video on it. I will wait to get official word, but I think Joe Schoen right now going in to the final interviews is probably the favorite for the New York Giants. The other candidate, Ryan Poles, kind of a little bit lesser known. He's been with the Kansas City Chiefs now for 13 years. I think he's the director of player personnel, a former offensive lineman with Boston College, and that's the thing that really attracts me to him. He's moved up along the ranks, is known as the right-hand man to the current GM with the Kansas City Chiefs, and he's a former offensive lineman. Well, what did the Chiefs do this year? They built up that offensive line with 2 late draft picks, and they've gone from one of the worst offensive lines in football. We all saw the Super Bowl last year to a very competent unit, and he deserves a lot of credit for that. So that's another guy a lot of people have their eyes on, was the youngest candidate that the New York Giants brought in at 36. He has had a history in the past of interviewing well. He got 2 interviews last year, I believe, for the Carolina Panthers job, and nearly got that job, if I'm not mistaken. So Poles, another very intriguing candidate. The guy that I like the most and that the New York Giants will be bringing in for his second interview tomorrow is Peters. And Peters is an incredible candidate. He's been with the 49ers now for a number of years. They had to create a position last year to make sure that he stayed on with the franchise and appointed him to the assistant general manager. So he did great things with the Denver Broncos, of course, helped build that Super Bowl roster before coming on to the 49ers. And a lot of 49ers fans think he is the mind behind a lot of the great decisions that franchise has made, including, of course, the George Kittle pick in the 5th round, Deebo Samuel in the 2nd round, and several others. But a lot of people really like Peters. Again, has had several interviews in the past and is a hot commodity for a potential future general manager. And whether or not the New York Giants and him would be a fit, we'll have to wait and see. But as of now, we're down to 3 candidates. And if you ask me today who I think will get the job, I think it'll be Shane. But in the end, I'd be completely happy with any one of these 3 guys. This also coming out from Renan, and I completely agree with this. The most encouraging thing to take from this Giants GM search, from what I've heard, they are offering carte blanche to candidates to reshape the organization. The Giants' way of operating is about to change drastically no matter who is hired. So basically what he's saying there is the guy that's going to be coming in is going to have free reign. He's going to be able to do whatever he wants with this football team. And I see a lot of people on Twitter freaking out over the fact that Dan Quinn has gotten an interview before the New York Giants have appointed their general manager. You don't think that John Mara has talked to these guys that have come in for interviews, the finalists that are there now, and asked them who they would like on their list of guys to bring in to interview? I guarantee that would be the case. And it's not like Dan Quinn, who would not be my first choice, would not be my second choice, would not be my third choice, but it's not like he's a horrible candidate. The guy coached with was the head coach for the Atlanta Falcons from 2015 to 2020. They made a Super Bowl in which I think the guy that deserved more of the responsibility was probably Shanahan with the offensive play calling. But regardless, was not a horrible coach for the Atlanta Falcons. They got rid of him shortly thereafter once those contracts kicked in. Obviously, Matt Ryan and Julio Jones and that team started to falter, but he did have some success there, and you saw what he did with the Dallas Cowboys this past year when he became the defensive coordinator. Again, like I've said several times, I would prefer the New York Giants' next head coach to be more offensively minded. It wouldn't be my first choice to bring in a defensive-minded head coach, but if these general managers are on board with it, I'm going to let them make the decisions, and I'm not going to flip out as a fan. This is coming out from Pelissero. The Giants put in a request to interview Cowboys defensive coordinator Dan Quinn for their head coaching job, source said. And Quinn has already interviewed for the Vikings. He's interviewed, I believe, for the Broncos, and he's interviewed somewhere else. He's interviewed, I think, the Bears. He's interviewed already for 3 other jobs. So before fans flip out, and I see a lot of people flipping out on Twitter, almost every team with a head coaching vacancy has brought Dan Quinn in. This coming out from Ian O'Connor. Dan Quinn is believed to be on the head coach list of all 3 Giants GM finalists so far. So this makes perfect sense. That doesn't mean he's their first choice. It doesn't mean he's their second choice. It means he's a guy that they want to sit down and at least talk to, which makes sense. He's one of the guys that are up, that could potentially land a head coaching job that is coming off a great year, being that he completely revitalized that Dallas Cowboys defense, and he's had prior success as a head coach with the Atlanta Falcons. Will they go that route? I doubt it, but who knows? I have to wait to see till I get the list of the candidates that the New York Giants are bringing in. Hopefully we get our answer sooner than later in terms of who the general manager is going to be, and I think we'll get that answer by Friday, Saturday at the latest. I'm thinking Friday, though, before the playoff games start. Obviously, these candidates that are still in the playoffs, polls, of course, with the Chiefs, the Bills, and of course the 49ers, aren't going to have their press conference until the conclusion of the playoff games this week. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Renan said it today, once they advance to the AFC or NFC championship round, you can't hire them. I think you have to wait to hire them until they are knocked out of the playoffs. So if that is the case, the Giants would probably be best served to hire that general manager before the playoff games start this week. You won't get a press conference until after them. But we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out. Like I said, I like all 3 candidates, and I'm just as much in limbo as all you guys. But the one thing I'll say, the future for the New York Giants is a lot brighter than it once was, at least in my opinion. They're bringing in a young mind, a guy that John Mara, it seems, is giving full control to build this organization. And as fans, that's all we've asked for the last 3, 4, 5 years. And it looks like that's the route that the New York Giants are going to take. Now, as a fan base, we have to allow this general manager to make his decisions. They all seem to be on board with at least bringing Quinn in for an interview. Let's wait to see the other head coaches that they bring in before we blow a gasket. Let's give them an opportunity to bring the guys in, evaluate the guys that are the candidates that they think could best help serve this football team. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe. Drop a comment. Maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.